An extreme honor. This is just unbelievable. I think it's going to be my most memorable trip ever. That introduction, the introduction hit on all the right themes, themes about people and, what they think about, what technology should mean to us, and not on things like dollars and all that. There's a saying that Canadians use to describe their relationship with Americans, and the way I've heard it, -40 is -40. And I like that. I'm one of the few Americans that actually uses Celsius at home. I figure I'm gonna, when I travel somewhere, I always like to eat at foreign restaurants. So I think I'm gonna eat at a foreign restaurant while I'm here, like maybe McDonald's. I grew up in a place called Silicon Valley, but it was called Santa Clara Valley back then. And it was a real valley. It was kind of like this place, almost nothing developed, just orchards and trees as far as the eye could see. And you'd have to ride your bicycle through orchards to brand new schools that were being built and new housing developments going in and new stores over the years. But it was really vacant. And it had a few companies that started making transistors. Transistors were developed on the East Coast at AT&T, and then William Shockley flew to Mountain View, California, and set up Shockley Labs. And eventually, after failing to make a type of transistor, some of the engineers left and started companies like Fairchild and Rheem and Raytheon, and they were basically designing these new little transistors that would replace vacuum tubes, much lighter, much lower cost to make someday. And it was, what a great opportunity to actually grow up in this valley and see the development. Early inspirations, for all of us, they come to us in books when we're young. We watch TV shows, we watch movies. Here's the direction I want to go. Here are the things that are important to me. Here's what means a lot. I would read these Tom Swift books, and it was about a young engineer who owned his own company with his father. And he was an engineer. He'd go into the laboratory and build a plasma field to hold aliens, or whatever it took. He was resourceful and would come up with answers to solve the great world problems. And these were the sort of books I read. And on my block, we had a lot of electronic kids who had engineers for parents, who knew electronics, who liked the fact that you could build little things that were kind of neat out of magazines. And we would do like the normal chores of weeding the neighbor's yard, and then we'd ask to be paid in electronic parts. Can we go into your garage? And they would have mayonnaise jars full of little parts, and oh wow, we'd learn the resistor codes and get some resistors for our work. These things meant a lot to us. We couldn't, even if we didn't build anything with them. Eventually, we did our own little projects. We'd build little projects that you'd see in Popular Electronics magazine. We'd ride our bikes down to Sunnyvale Electronics and buy some parts and put them together. They didn't sell transistors back in those days, but one of my friends down the block got a spool of telephone wire. So what we did was we strung the telephone wire along the fence between the houses up and down the block. We crossed over the street on the light poles, and we bought the parts to make little intercom system. Carbon microphones and batteries and speakers and buzzers and lights, and we could push a button and wake our friend up with a light in the middle of the night. And we just loved building these little things. They were ours. We didn't talk to parents about it. We didn't get any money from it. We just benefited. It was motivating because we were rewarded by knowing we had done something neat that the other kids at school weren't doing. When you get noted early in school for being good at math and science, in science fairs and the like, the teachers think you're the brilliant genius of all time, and you're like a rocket scientist, and that's where I fit in. I could beat the girls at, flashcards and mathematics, which was very unusual for a boy, they told me. And my science fair projects were pretty major, instrumental, long projects that you work on for weeks or months to build, and got me noted. I accidentally discovered probably the most important thing in my life, a journal in our hall closet that talked about computers. My father was an engineer at Lockheed. He worked on missile systems, guidance systems, and the like. And he wasn't a computer engineer, but he had this one journal he brought home by accident or something, and it had articles that described the most incredible things, like TV screens that served as a memory device, and little ones and zeros, and how you could add ones and zeros, and things called gates that made logic decisions. Wow, I read this and I thought, this is so incredible. Back then, computers were unknown. They were huge things that filled up rooms, the IBM 1401. They were in the military. They were in research departments of great universities. But you never, ever encountered or saw a computer in your life. And all of a sudden I said, it was like rocket science. Beyond rocket science was computer science. And I said, these ones and zeros are as easy as addition. They're easy to use. A fifth grader can understand them. A 10-year-old can understand them. You don't need higher level math, geometry and trigonometry and calculus and differentials. All you need is to think logically. It was so incredible. And I decided this was the passion of my life. I wanted to do this thing, this computer thing, for the rest of my life. I didn't think I'd ever have a job doing it, because engineers designed televisions and radios, after all. They didn't design computers. In this journal, I found a thing called De Morgan's theorem. De Morgan's theorem told you how you could take these things called AND gates and these things called OR gates, and you could swap them around with some little other devices that changed zeros into ones back and forth. And it was almost like in the radio world, where you could design a circuit with inductors or with capacitors and switch them around. An inductor in series was like a capacitor in parallel. They had these equivalents, and I loved it. My dad was a great teacher. Taught me a lot about, life, values, strong ethics, that basically your word and your truth is who you are. He was very, very serious about that. But he never pushed any of us kids in his direction of electronics. I went down with him to work one day, and I saw him soldering some parts together and creating a little picture on a screen. And I thought, wow, that is so neat. I want to do that. I want to be like my dad. But if you asked a question, he would pull out the blackboard and teach you. He would explain how atoms were made and how many electrons there were for each element and properties of crystals and how transistors work, whatever the question was, to get to the next step. I was very lucky to have my dad. In about 5th grade, I read a book about ham radio operators solving a crime. At the end of the book, it said you can get a ham radio operator's license at any age. And I thought, wow, nobody in school knows about this stuff. You can send messages to another state, to another country. Nobody in school knows about this. Nobody does it. And you can't even get a driver's license until you're 16 years old. So I decided I was going to get a ham radio license because I was kind of shy, and by being different, that made me special. Well, I studied in a course, and I actually did get a ham radio license, and my parents gave me one Christmas a kit for a transmitter and a kit for a receiver. Big rectangular metal boxes where you had to bolt the screws together and put all the pieces in, including the tube sockets. We had vacuum tubes back in those days. When a TV went bad, it was anyone in the house's job to pull out all the vacuum tubes, go down to a grocery store, and plug them each into a tester and find which tube went bad, buy a replacement. And that's how you fixed TVs back then. Everyone did it, as strange as it sounds. I mean, today we can't fix anything at home. So I built my ham radio out of these tubes and little dials that I had to thread together. It took me weeks in cutting wires for the right length for an antenna on the roof, and I became a ham radio operator at about age 10. Shortly after that, I did a science fair project that was a tic-tac-toe computer. Tic-tac-toe is a game, and as you know, if you're smart enough, you can never lose tic-tac-toe. That is computer logic, too. That's logic. If there's 2 X's in the corners, you want to take the square in between them if it's available. It's logic. You can actually play every possible game of tic-tac-toe on paper and make a set of rules, a set of logic equations for each of the possible situations that can come up and what your move should be. Each one of those moves turns into what's called a computer gate. To make this project, way back around 1960, had this big piece of plywood, and I pounded nails in. Nails are metal. I could solder the leads of transistors, diodes, and resistors all over it. So this whole board got covered with transistors, each one of them representing one of those logic rules to play tic-tac-toe properly. And I didn't realize it at the time. I thought logic is so simple. You take a 1 and a 1, and the answer is a 1, kind of that sort of thing. But